of the countries. So we are helping a number of countries in the last almost 10 years since IRENA was founded. You can see here in the bottom of the slide that IRENA membership has almost doubled in the last 10 years, and we are serving a number of regional initiatives. The countries within those initiatives have access to all information, latest updates in terms of cost competitiveness, scenarios to achieve full decarbonization, and of course tools, platforms that help to move from planning to implementation. So as well, alongside a key publication that we are publishing on a number of occasions throughout the year, IRENA provide a number of initiatives that support implementation of projects, and you can see on the top right corner of the slide. And today we'll be presenting you some work derived from one of these initiatives called the Project Navigator, which essentially supports the development of projects in the early phases. It means when the project still is on paper and people need to convince other organizations, other stakeholders to realize the project through the construction, commissioning, and operation of project. And we'll understand today, I will provide you some insight about what are the latest insights derived from the state of the art in terms of integrating climate resilient benefit in the project development phases. You can find as well a lot of relevant tools. We'll name a few. The Global Atlas, which helps to pinpoint locations with the most relevant resources, and our sister platform called the Marketplace, which in the future will be as well, together with us, closely integrated in the Climate Investment Initiative, that are a multi-stakeholder initiative to support the deployment of the solution worldwide. So those are, let's say, in a summary, the efforts that IRENA is carrying out to support regional initiatives, member countries in the deployment of the newest form of energy technologies based on the newer technologies for wind, solar, bioenergy, hydro, geothermal, and so on. Everything can be found on our website, www.irena.org. Important as well to know for today's French speakers is that some of those information are available in French. Je peux le dire en français également. Vous pouvez également trouver une partie de ces informations, notamment sur la plateforme Project Navigator, avec des documents clés, des outils pour soutenir le développement de projets. Et notamment, on a traduit une grosse partie de nos documents clés en français pour soutenir les pays, les porteurs de projets, notamment dans la région subsaharienne. Donc, une partie est déjà disponible, mais notre objectif est d'avoir l'ensemble de ces informations, de ces connaissances en français pour soutenir les porteurs de projets francophones dans la région subsaharienne. I always like to start with this, coming back in English, I always like to start to understand why project development face some challenges. Because of course people could intuitively think, if there is a political will to have more renewable energy, there is announcement, we see everyone on the news, hundreds of billions of dollars made available to support climate projects. How it is that sometimes projects do not come to implementation. There is a number of issues that here we try to summarize or exemplify to make people aware that projects have their own challenges that can be facilitated at the international level. One of the, I will not go through all of those today, but for example, many countries today, many financing parties have a perception that renewable energy project entails high technical risks. So it means that They see a renewable project as complex and maybe not working properly compared to other solutions that they are more aware of. So important to understand this perception and to respond to this perception. So we provide objective information, to the extent non-biased information to make people aware that, for example, onshore wind or solar PV project today have little to no technical risk. So it means that there is many parties that today consider those projects as having no technical risk. So bridging the perception in risk is important. How do you do this? This is relevant for climate resilience. You need to identify, assess risk and mitigate them. So provide credible, tangible risk mitigation measures helps to reduce the perception of certain stakeholders on this newer project. This is very important because, of course, the risk perception, let me rephrase it. The pricing of a lot of financing instrument will be derived from this risk analysis. It means that if you're not providing credible information regarding the risk underlying a specific project or location, financing parties like banks or other financing organizations will increase the price, so the interest and other indicators of your project. So it means that the competitiveness of the project depends on the ability of the project sponsor to provide credible answers to objective physical risks facing the project. And this is very important when you look at climate resilience, because of course we're looking at understanding how to withstand extreme weather events, so category 5 hazards against a specific location of projects. So this means that if you're not providing a relevant, credible measure to reduce a risk, people will first not enter a specific project, or they will price their entry fee or the interest rate or the minimum return minimum rate of return very high. So this is key, fundamental in the approach of understanding how to develop a project, is to work to reduce risks. The second one, I will not go through all of those today, but you can find a number of information, is of course IRENA as a public mandate to support those initiatives, and we take a specific look at improving local capacity and knowledge. So we want essentially to provide a level playing field so that project developers on the ground from their country can have access to the, let's say, the same information or level of information that international organizations or private companies will have. So because of course in newer markets, because today we're talking about, Alberto mentioned, you are coming from different countries today, probably returning to the country if you're studying in Germany, and there is not a lot of experience in these projects in Mali or Niger or Algeria. So it means that, of course, the first project will be flagship, first object of their kind, promoted because this is required by very experienced and recognized developers, but as well to realize the potential of the country, important to have local capacities. So this is as well important, that in order to deploy not only one project, but a series of projects, 100 projects, 1,000 projects, there is a need that local stakeholders have the same access to information regarding to bankability or how to make a project go through implementation. So this is in a short perspective, few of the risks, but you have other challenges. For example, building enough a pipeline big enough so that a lot of investors and banks can join a specific market, and addressing the issue of transactional cost and deal size that may hinder the entry in a specific market. Transparency as well is a key important topic, because of course we'll see later, but climate resilient benefits are typically assessed through cost-benefit analysis. And this, it means that there is an incremental cost to take into account if we are implementing credible physical or engineering measures to reduce certain risk. So financing party needs to be aware of this or well versed, and sometimes to have a specific fund or organization that knows about those risks, have an experience on this, and can help other financing parties to integrate this risk into their analysis will help. So transparency in the fund securement process, so to have access to many funds and financing parties across the world, is very important. As well, very short, but I wanted to, because we have a lot of students today, academic on an academic perspective. I really invite you to glance to all the apps that we provide that really cater the needs of different stakeholders in the project development and financing community. So Navigator looks at a project through the looking glass of a project developer and helps to alleviate issues associated with bankability, but you also find a lot of relevant knowledge and information on our sister platform Atlas Marketplace, the newest open solar contract templates, and of course our financing facility, the IRENA ADFD project facility. Coming to the Navigator, Navigator is a 5 years old initiative launched by IRENA in the pursuit of supporting countries to developing bankable renewable energy projects. Essentially, as in my introduction, how do you jump from planning to implementation? There is key issues at stake. There is sometimes non-uniform information across different stakeholders, meaning that banks have not access to the same information as technical of engineering firms and so on. So to create an environment where everyone can find information, understand how to move from A to Z on the project development cycle, which we typically break down into 9 steps. The first 6 steps are on the development side, so from planning or identifying an opportunity until the last minute before entering a project financing or financial closure table. Everything you need as a project developer to essentially translate technical information into the language of financiers and banks. And this is why we use the term bankable, because bankability is a big deal in the investment community. People expect bankable project. What does it mean? It means that someone work a project to the level where all issues that may have let's say an impact on the cash flows of the project are resolved. So it means that this is a long lead work, often more than 2-3 years for example solar project, where you are preparing the difficult discussion the developer may have when they are discussing with bank or investors. So this is really the topic of Navigator. So we provide a platform. I will come later on to explain you a bit what you can find, but essentially project information, project development guidelines. We are launching this year a guideline on climate resilience, so a specific one to integrate climate resilience approaches in the development cycle. And we are building this on the expertise and networks of IRENA. So it means that we are relying on the networks, working with international organizations, multilateral financing institutions, leading private sector companies that help us to capture, in a sense, the state of the art and formulate best practices in the field where this is today. People can find limited information or often full transparency. Maybe you will have access to it, but not free of charge. So as well, we are looking at open sourcing many know-how associated with project development. Today, in 2019, Navigator is a community of around 7,000 project developers that are working on the project, and we are helping some of them on the ground through activities, and I'll briefly explain those activities. The climate resilience for us is a crucial activity for regions that are at heart of our work. Most of a lot of IRENA work has to do with low and middle income countries where the impact of climate or extreme weather event are severe. So through the Navigator, to the development, the support of the project development cycle, our objective as well is to mainstream climate resilience in this field. So to make sure that everyone has access to reliable information, know-how, knowledge, tools, and templates to prepare a proposal that will be sufficiently credible to pass an investment table. Because you cannot have a project without finance, and you cannot have finance without a project. So there is an argument to be made that climate resilience for Sub-Saharan Africa, but also for Southeast Asia and the group of small island developing states is key to increase the deployment of renewable energy. So we do this through promoting project excellence, so enabling organizations, stakeholders to manage the context of renewable energy projects, and of course providing key know-how on the life cycle of projects, renewable energy projects. We are providing a hands-on approach, so looking at technology-specific tools. Today we support 9 types of renewable energy projects, ranging from the traditional project, large-scale solar PV, but as well, for example, the geothermal project or biogas or hybrid solutions within mini-grids. So very important to be specific to the technology at heart of every project. And we build capacity because we provide this knowledge, and this through as well targeted capacity building workshops where we work with a number of stakeholders to look at projects in their regional context. At the end, the goal is to reduce the project cycle, because when you start a project as a project developer, you have a mark on your head. Means that you have a set of resources, human, financial, and so on. But if you don't finish the development cycle within the reasonable time frame, you will not be able to go further. And this is not because of the quality of the team, because there is a lot of activities. Securing a permit for example, a wind farm can take in some region north of 9 years. So this is very important, how to shorten or accelerate the project development. And we do this as well to provide through the provision of guidance that can help bridge some gaps. Very shortly, we have been doing this since a long time, more than 5 years, but in the recent time frame, the last 3.5 years, we have trained more than 1,500 project stakeholders on the use of the Project Navigator guidance, tools, and templates across different regions, and including many colleagues and project developers in Africa. A key element I've talked before was about bankability. So this is something you will find if you're embarking on a project development career. Bankability, feasibility, insuranceability will be some keywords, although they are not really, let's say, they are not specific terms. They are very important to manage the development of a project. So the key for us center term is bankability. So this term is not like it's a very specific definition. So it means that bankability is whatever a bank thinks of your project, and this will make your project bankable. So it means it has to do with the work behind the project and the perception of the bank of this project. So the bank usually they are not doing this alone. They are relying on experienced third-party advisors that they are commissioning to do a due diligence around the project. So Navigator helps to pass a due diligence. So it's not to build the project documentation, but to prepare the information in the documentation and provide articulated arguments to answer the advisor of the banks. Why the banks? When I'm talking about the banks, because typically in this environment, the banks are the most difficult stakeholders to convince. So it means that if you are able to convince a bank, you can convince investors and authorities to join your project. So the level, the requirements set to convince a bank, so to convince them that you have, especially when we are looking at projects that are financed to what we call a project financing scheme or IPP scheme that only rely on its cash flow, if you are convincing enough so that the bank has a strong, let's say, argument that the project will be able to repay its loan over its lifetime, then you have all the arguments necessary to convince other parties. So this is why we're focusing on the banks, but of course it's not only about the banks. As well as I mentioned, this is the perception, so this needs to be managed. So very often, if you are, I would say, answer very strong in certain parts, environmental, social things, and then you are very weak or a bit hesitant on the technical adaptation required to match certain climate objective, the parties may leave the table. So this is important to be strong and manage the perception of your financing parties. This is important, and this is the subject of why we are looking at those lengthy documentation on how to guide project toward implementation. And of course, behind this, project developer needs to build reliable, safe, and well-performing projects. So this is also important. Project Navigator has it's an online platform complemented by the work of a small team working to support project developers. On the platform, I will try to provide the link, but it's easy to find. It's irena.org/navigator. You will find, once you register free of charge, you will have 3 sections that are helping project developers to improve their project. The first one is what we call the learning section, where you will find these guidelines, tools, templates in an online format, so you can come back when you have a questions or something with your mobile, tablet, or computer. But as well, because we know in Africa and other regions, sometimes online is not enough. So everything we do as well can be downloaded for free and used offline. On the second part, it's called the interactive workspace. This is a tool as well to use certain methodologies to look at projects. So here as well, you can select, create up to 3 workspaces and work around a few of our initial tools that we develop with the project Navigator launch. And the last part is called the financial navigator. So it helps essentially increase transparency in how to access funds. So how to, once you have a mature enough project, how to contact relevant financing or organizations that will match the type and location of your project. Une partie en français important pour vous dire que le Project Navigator est une plateforme en ligne gratuite où vous trouverez finalement ce que je vous parlais précédemment sur les documents clés liés au développement de projet et afférents à la bancabilité. Vous les trouverez sur cette plateforme. Donc une partie est déjà disponible en français et avant la fin de l'année, vous aurez l'ensemble des types de projets, des guides techniques en français. Ça veut dire que pour des étudiants comme vous, que vous travaillez sur un projet éolien, solaire, bioénergie, vous aurez accès en français. Souvent, c'est une barrière, évidemment, la langue, pour justement travailler sur vos projets. Évidemment, le reste des informations est accessible, l'espace interactif et la base de données sur les compagnies financières. I like to spend a bit more time to discuss a bit the role of guidelines, because this is where we have developed our approaches and methodology around climate resilience. So the scope of those is to understand essentially how to translate technical information into economical and financial analysis. The scope is around evaluating the technology requirements, looking at project planning and design, technical aspects, and preparing the information to build strong, let's say, argument behind a value or parameters. And of course, the work is not over when you have a feasibility study and good numbers on your financial model. You need as well to convince often stakeholders, financing parties, that you have understood the requirement to work on executing the project, so construction and commissioning, and the O&M phase, so the operation, which is a long-term phase of anything between 5 and 25 years. So in those guidelines, and the topic as well as resilience, very important, you will find the minimum requirement to develop a bankable project. Minimum, because of course, the more the better. You will find as well information to compare different options. This is why we are tackling these early stage phases, not only the latest work that you are doing before speaking with investors, but comparing options. And this is also access to case studies, tools, and models, including financial models, bankable financial models that we are working on, but also are today available for most of our guidelines, to help you navigate the requirement of like building a strong proposal and preparing the questions when you are submitting the proposal. This know-how and knowledge is available, as I mentioned, in our platform. You can use it online, so you can access it. This is the mission of IRENA, to provide free of charge information and analysis, and as well for the requirement of our regions of today, as well you can download them and use them offline. The tools as well are very important part of our platform, because not only you can read about how to make a project, but you can apply concepts. For let's say your specific project. So here are a number of tools that you can use to look at, for example, risk analysis, modeling of hybrid systems, or screening different options in between different alternatives of a given project. So here you can weigh the benefits of one or another options against objective criteria. So this is important for you, that not only should you access those guidance, but as well I really invite you to use the tools, and also don't hesitate to provide feedback, because we have a team here at IRENA to support people that are working on this from different channels, I would say, the project developers, the authorities, but as well academic organizations working with the navigator to prepare the future generation of renewable energy professionals. Today, I found it very timely to tackle this issue of climate resilience. Our senior leadership is just back from a very important meeting in New York regarding the UN Climate Action Summit, and the topic of resilience was overwhelming. So here it is a chart that I find very compelling to look at. Essentially, the the World Bank analyzed that between the 90s till today, disaster losses amount to north of $4 trillion. Most of of these disasters are caused by extreme weather events. And the trend is continuing. So today there is evidence that climate-related impacts will continue, and that the drivers and the impacts will be felt more acutely, so more importantly, by the lowest income countries, so by the poorest of us all. So there is a justification to act, to look at those issues of resilience against climatic events. As well, important to see that we are not all equal and not all prepared the same to face climatic events. This is a chart by, again, the World Bank and a publication. You have the source there to see that not all countries are prepared the same. And if we're looking at our region of interest of today, Africa, you see this color. The color is more in the red part, so it means that essentially in the countries, the most marginalized part of the population tend to be less resilient, and of course can have more difficulty to recover from climatic and disaster event. And in addition to this, the fact that those events are occurring at a higher frequency makes that they are, let's say, losses. So the losses are adding up. So the losses are compounding because they are facing successive extreme weather events. It means that if we're not integrating those aspects in the development of the new form, because in summary for the region, a lot of the new energy capacities will come either through a standalone renewable energy or some form of hybrid solution in a specific grid. But if we are not incorporating climate resilience in those project designs, means that the most marginalized populations will continue to face the greater risk with this. So the important part of that, there is a background behind integrating this, and also working to reduce poverty and energy poverty by increasing energy access to climate resilient projects. The notions of today, very important, is the risk. So very important terminology, how to navigate risks. For climate resilience, the most important definition will come around disaster risk, which is a function of many other conceptual issues. The first one is a bit theoretical, I apologize, but is the probability of occurrence of a natural disaster against its intensity. The second parameter is who is affected, who and what is affected in a given location. And the third factor is the level of vulnerability of those people affected by the natural hazards and so on. So the disaster risk, which can be calculated as a function of those factors, will be assessed against those criteria. And of course, vulnerability is important. For example, in other sector, it will be something related to how fragile construction of houses is. So does new construction or the building stock around new construction integrates resilience? And this is the aspect of vulnerability. And of course, on the topic of energy, vulnerability will be how dependent people are on their energy access source, and will be to understand how they can mitigate the risk of, for example, interruption of services and loss of grid connections. The as well important part has to do with planning and other parameters like poverty reduction, environmental degradation, climate change, and all those will be a driver to measure how a risk will impact the communities in a specific region. So the fact that those issues can affect those issues can affect how prepared a project needs to be against a specific can be sorry again those issues, so planning, poverty of the population, environmental status, and level of climate emergencies in the region will affect how severe a specific event will be. I saw your comment. I'll try to formulate this in French as well. This is an important aspect because this risk is fundamental in the approach of evaluating the benefits of this integration in project development. The good news is that studies across the world shows that integrating climate resilience in infrastructure projects yield tremendous benefits and much higher than the cost that than the price tag they have. So we have seen example here. I always try to look at recent one. You have cyclones in South Asia, in Bangladesh or India, where integrating in the infrastructures climate resilience really help to reduce dramatically the impact of for example, loss of life in population. So very interestingly, that there is already evidence across the world that climate resilience yield tremendous benefits for infrastructural projects. Un petit résumé en français, évidemment, le risque est une notion fondamentale dans la thématique de la résilience climatique, et ce risque spécifique, le risque climatique, est une fonction de plusieurs concepts importants comme la probabilité d'occurrence d'un événement naturel, évidemment, dans une région, dans une localisation spécifique, le type d'infrastructure, donc le type, est-ce qu'il y a des hôpitaux, des écoles, etc., et le type de population, est-ce qu'on parle de population urbaine ou rurale, et ensuite comprendre le niveau de vulnérabilité de ces populations lorsqu'elles sont exposées à des événements extrêmes. Donc c'est le risque climatique qui va être l'indicateur, un petit peu le pouls de l'intégration et de la préparation des projets d'énergie renouvelable, est une fonction finalement de plusieurs éléments qu'il faut comprendre, mais également évaluer dans un contexte spécifique. Donc c'est important de comprendre le concept général, mais également l'appliquer dans votre contexte, donc via des recherches, des études et des échanges avec les communautés. Et évidemment, le fait qu'il y a la planification au niveau régional, les niveaux de pauvreté dans la région, le niveau de protection environnementale et les impacts et les événements déjà existants liés au changement climatique vont influer sur le niveau, l'intensité des risques climatiques, et donc peut mener à des événements plus difficiles. la littérature aujourd'hui montre, la recherche dans ce secteur montre que les bénéfices liés à l'intégration du concept de résilience climatique dans le développement d'infrastructures plus grand que l'énergie, donc l'infrastructure en général, a des bénéfices tangibles, nets, positifs et sont largement supérieurs aux coûts afférents aux mesures de résilience climatique. Des exemples flagrants peuvent être identifiés dans des régions comme le sud de l'Asie, en Bangladesh ou en Inde, où on a vu une réduction significative de l'impact au niveau de la perte, au niveau des morts liées aux cyclones qui sont passés dans cette région. Donc vraiment, on peut aujourd'hui mesurer de manière vraiment précise ces bénéfices. Et c'est pour ça qu'on est en train d'intégrer ces considérations spécifiquement dans la thématique des projets d'énergie renouvelable. Je vais ensuite, I'm gonna try as well to provide you technical elements. I see the time going on, but I think we're right on track. I'll conclude in a short, in a few minutes, so we can have a series of Q&A, question of answers. But you can as well, I invite you to formulate your questions in the chat. I think Alberto mentioned this possibility to formulate your questions. I see some of them are already there. We'll try to address some of those in the time we have. Climate resilience has to do with risk. Risk has to do with the role of a project developer is to look at risk and manage them. So the first aspect has to do with managing and identifying appropriately the risk associated with the renewable energy project. We do this through three different phases. The first one is the hazard assessment, so looking at existing stock of hazard in the region or location to understand how those could affect in the future your specific project. So we look at historical figure of hazards to estimate the probability and the intensity of specific hazard in the future. So we try, because this is difficult, to look at the past to predict the future in terms of hazard, and this is important as a project. The owner or sponsor, very often you will rely on databases available from governments that collect information over sometimes several decades of floods, storms, landslides, and temperature levels, and this you can use them to correctly assess the perspective on hazard. The second work has to do with the exposure assessment. So here, based on the site-specific inventory carried out by the project developer, this is about estimating the effect of the hazard you have identified on your project assets. And this will result in a scoring of how exposed your given project is to the hazards of your location. So if there is a significant flooding in the region, and evidence show from the past that there will be future flooding there, the exposure assessment will inform how to prepare. For example, elevating solar PV structures. So in the event of a flood, you can withstand those that are not extreme but are between low and medium intensity. And of course, the third one, importantly, which take into account hazardness and exposure, will be how vulnerable your project will be against. So what are the damages, potential damages, and how costly they will be to be, so how remediation, so how to resolve issues, will be severe or not. So essentially a cost estimation on what are the work necessary to remediate potential damages on the site. So it will provide you the capacity to adapt to specific conditions of your project, and this is dependent. You can see on the right part of the screen that in the early phases of the project development cycle, project developer look at risk assessments and establishing inventories of risk and evaluating, but as well start to formulate reduction measures, either through the physical, natural, or engineering types that are specific to the technology of the project, either a standalone technology or hybrid solution. And they are measured not only through how much they cost, but how much they benefit the project. So very pragmatically, if you elevate the structure of the mounting structure of a PV project, because you have a flooding event, high flooding events in the region, this will be, so the cost of increasing so to design the structure to have to withstand higher wind blows on the structures, this will have a cost, but this cost will be weighed against potential cost to have to redo the whole mounting systems and reconnect the panels and so on. So this is cost benefit analysis. I will show you an example later on. On the later project development phases, this will have to do with preparing the discussion with your financing stakeholders, looking at risk reduction measures, so how the climate resilience affects the structuring of the project. So if you are in a project finance scheme, looking at the cash flows and estimating the probability of a reduction of cash flow against specific events, as well understanding how to build a business continuity plan. So if there is an event that could be categorized as extreme or force majeure, how the project company, the SPV, the owners of the project, and operating companies will ensure continuity of the project, so minimum of service delivery for the community. The important part is that as well there is a need to address the financial implication of those events and how strong the measures implemented will be against potential losses. Losses has to be dealt on the financial level, and it will affect how the structure, the project will look like, either through loans, type of loans with different maturity, so longer or shorter, that you renew over time to account for the evolution of the climatic conditions, to different bond, green bonds or other type of bonds, and as well if there is a viability gap that can be addressed through either grant or subsidy for a specific period of time. Typically, you will need to assess with your stakeholders either to retain or transfer the residual risk of the project after the technical measures are implemented. And we'll see that either it is done through looking at reserved funds and or looking at having contingent loans, so loans that can be used to bridge certain events. And of course, the topic of insurance and risk pooling will lead to a greater understanding on how to plan ahead in the event of a severe or catastrophic event for the region and affecting your given project. This is I would say this is the start of the work that we need to the project developer needs to carry out to prepare essentially the justification of implementing climate resilience measures, so risk reductions within the project development, and to price them accordingly and explain them to financing parties. The risk mitigation I mentioned, they are very useful, but also they are used depending on the either frequency or severity of climatic events. So the typical measure used to reduce risk, to manage risk is risk retention. So either through implementing reserves accounts in the project financing structures and having access to contingent credit sources that will help having solutions in the event of a difficult event during the operation or construction of the project. For more severe disaster, risk retention is not enough, of course, because this will need that there is a certain transfer of liabilities to appropriate parties. So here, the topic of insurance is something very well known in the infrastructure and other sectors, agriculture, real estate, and micro insurance. And of course, looking at swaps and bonds in terms of looking at resolving catastrophic events. So the topic of securitization will be very useful to transfer potential risk to the appropriate parties. Une partie en français, c'est pour faire voilà, une partie en français. Pour revenir rapidement, trois thématiques importantes à prendre en compte. La partie, en fait, faire l'inventaire des différents événements climatiques, analyser est-ce que le projet va être exposé à ces risques qui sont identifiés dans la région et quantifier la vulnérabilité donc, en termes de termes économiques ou en termes de temps pour retourner à un niveau d'opération qui est celui défini dans les conditions de base de financement. Important. Donc ces trois aspects vont être critiques pour abonder, préparer des mesures crédibles à présenter pour développer un projet résilient face aux défis climatiques. On sépare deux phases de temps dans le développement du projet. La partie amont, où on va justement travailler sur identifier ces risques, les évaluer, les quantifier, associer ce travail avec un travail de formulation technique, donc qui va être spécifique en fonction de différentes technologies. J'ai parlé du cas de l'exemple où par exemple on va parler de l'élévation des structures mécaniques qui soutiennent les panneaux photovoltaïques ou autres, par exemple sur les inverters également, pour comprendre comment, dans le cas d'événements climatiques sévères, le projet, finalement, la production par exemple d'énergie ne sera pas interrompue ou alors partiellement. Par exemple, il y a des schémas en fait électriques qui permettent justement de produire de l'énergie sur une partie d'une centrale ou par exemple dans le cas d'éoliennes que le risque sur une ou deux éoliennes, enfin sur le parc, pardon, on puisse dans le cas d'événements compliqués, on puisse travailler sur la production, on va dire, sur un ou deux mâts. Voilà. Donc ça, c'est des éléments évidemment spécifiques, techniques, associés à la technologie et au projet. Dans la phase aval, ça va être la préparation de la discussion avec les financeurs. Donc là, ça va être préparer l'impact de ce travail technique sur la structure du projet, qui va être en fait un financement, typiquement un financement sans recours ou un financement bancaire avec certaines conditions. Également, travailler sur un plan de continuité. Qu'est-ce qui se passe s'il y a un tel événement? Comment développer en fait un plan d'urgence pour que le projet continue à fonctionner. Et la deuxième importante thématique dans cette phase, ça va être le travail sur l'ingénierie financière. Donc là, travailler sur les financements bancaires, leur maturité, leurs conditions, de termes et conditions, et regarder comment implémenter des techniques pour mettre de côté des réserves, ou alors travailler avec avec des organisations pour transférer en fait les risques en cas par exemple, et donc c'était le cas l'exemple dans cette diapositive, de dire pour des événements avec une sévérité plutôt faible mais qui intervient souvent, on va développer une approche, on va intégrer le risque au projet, et pour des événements plus compliqués, complexes, avec beaucoup plus de dimensions au niveau de différentes parties prenantes, là, il va falloir travailler sur le transfert de risque. Donc c'est là la partie très importante de formuler des éléments crédibles pour travailler avec ces institutions financières. I see the time running, so I'll try to be short. But here, this is an example, just an example. Alberto and the colleagues will share with you the slides and the links of our platform. But here, an example to say, if you remember, I talk about cost-benefit analysis. So essentially, you need to put on paper for example, the net present value of a specific project configuration against the configuration that integrates climate resilience measures. And how do you convince parties that this is good? Is first that they should be positive. So there is a specific benefits to implementing those in terms of continuity, but as well is that the additional cost will lead a greater net present value of the project. So as well important to calculate financial indicators like IRR, NPVs against different project scenarios. This will be fundamental in convincing financial parties. So I always say you need to speak the language of financier. They don't speak about kilowatt hours. They speak about dollars, IRRs, debt service ratios, and so on. If you speak the language, it will be easier to implement measures that are integrating climate resilience. So speaking the language of financier is very important. Rapidement en français, c'est un exemple d'analyse des coûts et des bénéfices. Important à regarder, c'est quel est en fait, est-ce que les mesures produisent en fait des bénéfices positifs nets, sont supérieurs à zéro, et est-ce que ces bénéfices sont supérieurs finalement, est-ce que la valeur actualisée nette de la configuration de projet où on intègre en fait ces facteurs de résilience sera supérieure en fait? Est-ce qu'il y a un intérêt économique et financier à les intégrer? Et souvent, et on l'a vu dans plusieurs industries et plusieurs cas pratiques, quel que c'est le cas ici, je montre un exemple un exemple de ce type d'analyse. To conclude a bit of today, I wanted to give you a few elements. You are the future generation of energy professionals, and climate resilience will be part of the next 10 to 20 years discussion around renewable energy project. Renewable energy will be associated with climate, and climate resilience is a very important factor to factor in early as possible in a project, because of course the cost to design it early on is lower than has to be reworked to integrate them later on. So first element, benefits, as I showed you before, needs to be assessed, demonstrated using credible, specific, quantifiable performance standards or thresholds that shows benefit for the project, its stakeholders, and the broader community. Always involve factors that integrate the broader community. Secondly, specifically, as a project developer, in your project proposal, you will need to demonstrate that the project is in English fit for purpose, in a sense that at a system level, not only the equipment, but at the system level, the integration of a PV panel and inverters and a substation and so on provide climate resilience benefits. They can be formulated through minimum availability of the plant, acceptable tolerances, service operated for a specific range of climate hazard, backed up by existing experience. All these using the language of investors and financiers. One of those can be net present value. In the future, of course, this will go much beyond, because today there is certain threshold where you can trigger insurances and associated with the code and regulation. So this also will be an evolving environment where, for example, the notion of force majeure will evolve and the contractual implication of force majeure will change. And as well, insurance contract will be different because, of course, the documentation of risk will improve, the category, the inventory of hazard will have evolved, and insurance will be more and more specific to a set of risk and how strong project integrated measures to reduce those risks in a climate perspective. Je peux le faire en français aussi, c'est important. Le mot de la fin, c'est qu'il faut vraiment utiliser des éléments objectifs, spécifiques et qui peuvent être quantifiés pour définir en fait les bénéfices liés au facteur de résilience. Ça doit être analysé au niveau du projet, au niveau de l'impact sur les parties prenantes du projet, et également la communauté, donc au niveau local, régional, national, international, pour justement avoir la meilleure argumentation pour convaincre que l'intégration des facteurs de résilience a un sens pour un projet spécifique dans une région, etc. Le travail lié pour la préparation de projet, c'est que justement le projet doit être suffisamment mature, fit for purpose en anglais, au niveau système. Ça veut dire pas non plus uniquement travailler sur un équipement, mais sur l'intégration de composants, d'ensemble, et également l'intégration des considérations de garantie de différentes parties prenantes quand un projet s'attache les services d'un ensemblier ou d'un opérateur. Donc, très important, il faut que le projet sur certains paramètres, disponibilité, tolérance, capacité à produire de l'énergie en fonction de certains éléments climatiques. Par exemple, on voit dans le Calaisie, par rapport à des ouragans, est-ce que les projets solaires peuvent passer des ouragans? Et tout ça, le formuler dans le langage des financeurs. Donc les financeurs, j'espère qu'il n'y a pas trop de financeurs ou des gens qui veulent faire la finance, mais un kilowatt ou un kilowatt-heure, ça leur parle pas trop. Il faut parler le langage de la finance, des dollars, des euros, l'éco dans le futur, je l'espère, et pour justement comprendre qu'ils attendent des réponses pratiques sur comment le projet sécurise les flux financiers et comment le projet va fonctionner sur 10, 20, 25 ans. Et évidemment, cette thématique va être important dans le futur où on va aller au-delà des niveaux aujourd'hui en termes d'assurance et de régulation. Okay, I don't have the time today for this, but this was an example of resilience funding for islands, but this can be discussed for Africa as well. So the short message is that funding is not countries need to set aside some funding to prepare for climate resilience, and this is often dependent on the level of income level of a country. Key takeaways, this is the final message of today. How to solve the issue of climate resilience on project proposal and project development. Things you have under your control is to identify, assess, mitigate climate risk, as early as possible in the project development cycle. Look at how organizations are working to strengthen mechanism to work on risk retention, risk transfer, and so on across regions. Look for everything that helps to mainstream climate resilience for project developments. Always work, and this is important, the climate resilience work will only be successful if we enhance the capacity on the ground, local knowledge and capacity. We need to inform local decision makers toward the benefits of those. So the long-term perspective is a key to integrate climate resilience safeguards in project development. And this will help to facilitate that more financing flow are channeled toward climate resilience, strong climate resilience projects that are bankable. And a message as well, we need in the international community, and I think hopefully with your help as future professional in this sector, to measure, evaluate, and share the results. And when I say this, good or bad. So because we only learn from extreme events when they are come. So when they came. So this is important that we have this share of knowledge at the international level. So this also is the responsibility of all of us to share those results. As well to build more sustainable project, and this goes into the objective of looking at how we can transition to a sustainable energy sector. So this is very fundamental to the notion, and especially affecting region like Sub-Saharan Africa, North Africa for our colleagues in Nigeria, but as well other regions, Southeast Asia, the small island developing states, and so on. You find those information through different means. First of all, IRENA provide those online, irena.org and irena.org/navigator. You will find those information through other organizations. Many banks, many institutions are developing climate resilience principle or framework. So I really invite you, in the source of the slides of today, you will find some very interesting sources to look at what does it take to build a climate resilient bankable project proposal. And lastly, you can contact us. We are here with you if you want to build projects in your country, and you want to secure information or understand or collaborate on this topic. The team that is working on this on Project Navigator is open for you, and I'm happy to share today, but as well in the future, my contact to start a discussion. So I'm very happy to be with you today, and we have not a lot of time, but to open for questions.
Hi, thank you very much. First of all, Simon, it was a really interesting presentation, and we are a little bit tight on time, but I guess we still have some time for questions. So the first one was from Thierry. If you're sharing successful stories, successful project stories through the platform, specifically that integrates climate resilient approaches in African context. You have to turn on your microphone.
Yes, I think yes, there is early evidence of integration of climate resilience safeguards or measures in African project. I think we have learned from, for example, the different hazards that could affect location, that they need to have specific selection of technologies. So we have seen in the recent time that the climate resilience or climate hazard has changed or has directed how the project developer selected the type of technology. For example, moving from a traditional monocrystalline solution with a simple mechanical structure to a more elevated one, or also the type of inverters, looking at more distributed inverters to be able to look at how to produce energy when there is an issue with a specific part of the control of the plant. The first project, I think you can look at project in Senegal, for example, are showing that these concerns were addressed through a discussion with the authorities and the financing parties.
Okay, thank you very much. We also have another question from Sriana. Asks, what is the role of IRENA at national level, and what is the role as an NGO in, I mean, I guess in the local level?
Yeah, so this is a traditional misconception. We are not an NGO. NGO stands for non-governmental organization. We are an international governmental organization. So we represent the interest of governments. So in a sense, we are helping them. You have the slides here. Inform decision maker toward climate resilient benefit. We are a source of information for government to look at those other issues, and we are building networks and fostering exchanges between countries, south-south exchanges toward different concepts ranging from planning, implementation, innovation, socio-economical benefits, and so on. So the role of IRENA at the national level is stays like this to support countries in that transition toward renewable energy, and we do this through informed discussion with government, but as well supporting underground project through facilitation, because as well we are not strictly speaking a financial organization. We do not provide directly financing. We are supporting projects. So this is something as well important to understand. IRENA has the can channel its support through the government, but with as well with the broader community, the private sector, the civil society, and of course the academia.
Thank you very much for that clarification. The next one is from Martin. He asks, like, regarding bankable energy projects, what local conditions are taken into consideration when evaluating the bankability of these energy projects that IRENA is supporting?
Yeah. So the I understand this question in the context of today climate resilience. So I think we are trying to categorize the climate-related risk. Typical risk involve environmental and weather conditions, for example, the frequency of extreme weather events like cyclone, hurricane, typhoon, as well substantial increase in extreme wind speed, so not the average, but the extreme wind speed, which can make or break a project, as well as looking at temperature evolution, so looking at extreme temperature and of course the notion of heavy precipitation, so look at flooding, drought, and other underlying wildfires caused by variation in precipitation. We look as well at erosion processes, so for example surface erosion and how sedimentation can affect the civil work for a given project. And of course this is the case a lot of sometimes in Africa. The topic of landslides as well are something important to be evaluated, to understand whether integrating climate resilience aspect will improve the bankability of a project on a difficult location. And of course, for coastal areas, many of those in Africa they are, sea level rise as well will be a factor to have a look. So there is many others, but I will say this is more or less the one that come on top of the traditional bankability factors that needs to be translated from a technical perspective to economical and financial formulas.
Thank you very much. And we have one last question. It's in French. My French is not very good at the moment, but I will be asking how to continue the conversation after this webinar. They're
Yes.
interested in researching in Mali with climate change.
Very good. So this, you see, I'm doing directly. This is my email on the chat, sbenmaraz@irena.org. You can contact me, but as well, if you want more formal contact, I really invite you to send a message to IRENA. We have a email inbox, info@irena.org, that will help you to as well clarify the opportunity for collaboration. This is as well I want to invite, because we have today students that IRENA supports and invites throughout the year students to work on our activities. So we have an internship program that can be accessed through our website. I invite you to submit your application and to specify what kind of work you're interested to work on. This is something as well important for colleagues in Sub-Saharan Africa. This is a paid internship, so this is not a free of charge contribution. We have been fortunate enough to enable some stipend for students and researchers to come to work on a short-time basis to work with us. So you can contact me, but also as well invite you to formulate your interest directly to our general inbox, so you can be better directed in responding to the needs. So in general, collaboration research, yes, collaboration internship program for students, and as well look at our entry-level program called the Associate Professional Program, which provide an ideal, ideal entry to the renewable energy sector. Well, I say not ideal because there is many ways. There is the public-private sector that are equally important to achieve the objective of the Paris Agreement.
Yeah, thank you very much, Simon, for this opportunities that you're presenting the participants. I really hope they get informed about them. And please, if you have further questions, just send an email to Simon or directly to IRENA. So I guess we're really on the edge of 10 minutes past the time. But if you have questions, we just still have time for one. If you want, just feel free to ask in the chat box.
Well, while people are formulating questions, I want to thank the team that organized this webinar series. I think this is very important, and IRENA as a whole look forward for future interaction with this kind of initiatives.
For sure, and thank you for being so so available for this summer school. And yeah, for sure we'll keep in touch and further events. Thank you. I guess that's it for the question today. But
for today, yes, people maybe wants to
process.
Yes, go ahead. So
Yeah.
cool. Thank you, thank you, Alberto.
Thank you.
Bye everyone. Ciao,
Bye.
ciao. Au revoir. À bientôt.
Ciao.